go ahead and
Morning.
All right, William, I made you a co-host, so if folks join while we get going, please go ahead and just monitor the Zoom. I would appreciate that. We can go ahead and get started. Hi, Sarah. All right, so hi, everyone. Happy Friday, Junior. Thank you for joining us for our rescheduled GSPAC meeting. We were supposed to meet in February for our regularly quarterly meeting, but we all got hit with the snowstorm pretty hard. And it made it very difficult for us to meet when there was no power for a lot of us. So thank you all for joining us again. And have no fear, we do have our next quarterly GSPAC meeting scheduled for May, which I will remind folks at the end of this call. So we will go ahead and get started. Marina Delajanis, Deputy Water Resources Director. I also serve as the lead for our Big Valley GSPAC. I'm going to go ahead and get us started on our roll call of our current GSPAC members. When I say your name, please state here and who you are representing. David Wise.
I'm present and I represent Bella Vista Farming Company.
David. Pat Scully.
Here, Scully Packing Company.
Great, thank you, Pat. Sarah Ryan.
I'm here and I'm representing tribal government, and that's Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Do we have Scott Hornig on the call yet? Not see him. He should be joining us by the end of the call. Val Nixon.
Here, Lake County Land Trust.
Thank you, Val. Rebecca Harper.
Present, Lake County Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Rebecca. And myself, Marina. And we will go into our open seats, but just as a refresher, we do have some vacant seats, which we will be talking about later in today's discussion, including an environmental seat, a private user seat, a private user domestic well owner, and then 2 underrepresented user seats. So we are going to go ahead and review and approve the November 18th, 2022 minutes. This review motion for approval and second will come from a current GSPAC member. Do I need to share my screen and review the minutes? Everyone should have those. If not, I will wait for a motion to approve or any comments or edits, and then a second.
I move to approve them as presented.
I second that motion.
Thank you, David, for the motion and Rebecca for the second. And just as a refresher, all of our GSPAC materials are located on the website. Again, I will remind folks by the end of this discussion. All right, so moving on to agenda item 3, if you're following along, our Big Valley groundwater updates. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to William Fox, Water Resources Program Coordinator, to provide an update on our current groundwater conditions. And just note this map was made for the February GSPAC call. So Mitchell and William do have some additional updates as they just conducted their well run in our Big Valley Basin yesterday. So take it away, William.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to let Mitchell speak on this. I'll speak on the TSS application next. He did go out in the field yesterday and was able to sample Big Valley, so he can speak on this and then what we saw yesterday. So Mitchell, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a great morning. As you can see, most of our February levels were in the 10 to 20 foot range. As of yesterday, we went out and we did a well sounding of all of these wells that are here, as well as the other wells that are in our biannual. And we're looking at an average of 4 to 7 foot depth currently. So we've had an increase of maybe at the most probably 10 foot in some of these. If you look at 13N-09W03R1, that one was at 18 feet. Those are around 5 feet now. So we're looking really good inside of our basin currently.
Great. Thank you, Mitchell. Are there any questions regarding our groundwater monitoring in our Big Valley Basin for William or Mitchell? And if folks aren't aware, Mitchell is our new water resources technician who is focused on groundwater monitoring. So you may see him out in our Big Valley Basin, conducting some monitoring. So thank you, Mitchell. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I was hoping that you could also just go over whether those are all of the wells within the Big Valley Basin that you're going to be monitoring, if these are all the RMS, and if there is, if any of these are ones that are done monthly.
So, can I share my screen for a second, Marina? So this is, I think this is in the agenda packet as well. I tried to present on this. Can you see the basin and this website here? Correct. Okay, good. So this is in the agenda packet too. It's bigvalley.gladata.com. And with this kind of data dashboard portal, you can filter by if it contains water quality data, water level data. You can filter by type, you can filter by status, and then it does have the RMS wells coded in orange. So let's see if filter by type. So a representative monitoring site, I can click that and it'll filter and you can see all of the RMS sites. Those are both RMS for water quality and water level data. And so then you can click on a point and then view the extended details. And you can see general info about it, and then the water level data, an active hydrograph on it, and then if there is any water quality data on it. So we have 2 points of water quality data for this one site. So that will be linked in this packet as well, and is publicly available. And we're going to update this with we just did water quality sampling. So when we get those back, those will be added, and the most recent water quality data will probably be added next week. Water level data.
Okay, thank you.
Val, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you drilled any new wells for monitoring, or is that farther down in the program?
Yeah, I think that's the next item. If you want to start sharing again, Marina, then we can get into that. All right, so we do have 2 wells lined up to be drilled late summer this year by DWR if all things go to plan. One is proposed to be in the Kelseyville Row Yard. You'll see on the far on the map to the right, the far right of the map, there's a purple polygon. That's within the Kelseyville Road Yard. That is one of the proposed sites. It is right along Kelsey Creek. The other proposed site is the pullout off of Argonaut and 179 right off Adobe Creek right there. So those are the 2 proposed drill locations. DWR made a site visit. Quinn, who's on the call today now, came out and we looked at a bunch of sites around Lake County. On the left here, these are all the proposed drill sites. I think I was explaining last time that this year we're trying to drill 2 for that groundwater surface water interaction to get those in as soon as possible. And then next year we're proposing more wells to understand different aspects that we want to know about, like the wells up here in the top of the basin closer to the lake to better understand the flux between the lake and our groundwater basin. And then there's some other proposed deeper wells to understand kind of the water quality and water levels on our deeper aquifers, because almost all the wells in our basin are really, really shallow. So those 2 wells are supposed to be drilled late summer if everything goes according to plan. And then I think we have 5 more to be proposed to drill later by DWR. So nothing as of yet, but hopefully this year we'll get 2 in on one on Kelsey and one on Adobe. Yes, David?
William, so when you say, a couple questions, when you say most of the wells are really, really shallow, what do you mean? And then secondly, how deep will these new wells that you're planning to drill this year, what can you tell us anything about those at this point?
Yeah, so I think most of the wells that I'm aware of are less than 200 feet deep, and even more of that are less than 100 feet deep. At least most of the domestic ones are less than 100 feet deep. The wells that are proposed to be drilled are going to be, I think, 600 feet. So they're pretty much going to try to drill as far as they can. and then do like a geotechnical log to better understand the makeup, the geologic makeup of the basin, because we don't really have much data below 300 feet essentially. So I think that's the targeted depth is 600 feet. And Sarah?
So are the two that are being proposed that are on the map there, are those planned to be 600 feet as well?
I think these are the 300-foot ones. So they're 300 and they're going to be screened at multiple intervals. They're going to be multi-completion wells.
So that means that it would be able to pick up groundwater, surface water interaction at that
Mhm.
depth because
Yes.
it's multi-screened?
Yeah, it's going to be screened. Definitely, it's going to be screened at multiple intervals, but they're going to drill. So when they get to the first water table, screen it there, then go farther, and then do multiple screenings, and basically like wells within itself.
Oh, that's interesting. So the one that's on Argonaut is really close to one of our pressure transducers. Were you planning on kind of piggybacking on that data to show groundwater, surface water interaction, or?
I
what-
definitely needed to reach out to your team in Flow West to get that updated pressure transducer data, and I do definitely want to incorporate that into this study and our annual reports and reporting for DWR. So that is a note that I need to reach out to you and Flow West to get that updated pressure transducer information.
Yeah, we're the, I mean, just reach out to us, but I mean, the working together is great, but I'm still waiting on an MOU for pressure transducer at Highland Springs. Has been well over a year. So please help me with the stuff that I need. I'm happy to help you with the stuff you need.
Sounds good. John?
Oh yeah, for the two new wells that are going in, the monitoring wells, do you know how frequently the water levels will be measured? Or how
I think
frequently
they're
they're
supposed to
sampling?
be, I think we're ideally putting data loggers on them and they should be
Awesome.
15-minute intervals.
Great.
Quinn, can you speak on that at all?
Yeah, hi, Quinn Little, California Department of Water Resources. Typically speaking, with our monitoring wells that we put in, the telemetry will measure hourly, mostly as a battery preservation technique. These sites are, depending on the type of telemetry we run, either running on C batteries, which last about a year on hourly measurement intervals, or they're running on solar, hooked up to a 12-volt battery. So providing enough power to these is a concern to us. We tend to go for an hour, and that gives us enough longevity that we're not having to come out and change batteries constantly.
Thank you. Oh, Sarah?
Is that link going to be made available for the telemetry?
Yeah, because I think it would be DWR basically hosting that and making that available. So you can correct me if I'm wrong, Quinn, but it would be through DWR and then posted publicly available through their kind of data portal.
Yeah, it should be available once a day. It'll upload all the last 24 hours worth of information. And it should show up on any of our DWR databases. The one that I know for a fact it should show up on is the monitoring network module on Sigma Data Viewer.
Does that mean that DWR is going to be carrying the long-term costs of the data service? Or is that the county?
To my knowledge, it's us. That last I heard, we were putting in the data loggers and we were managing that.
Okay, thanks.
Does anybody have any additional questions on the TSS application or the drilling of new wells in the Big Valley Basin? All right, I'll pass it back over to you, Marina.
Great, thank you so much, William. So I also have on the slide our Big Valley FSS update, just as a refresher for folks. We have in the past received facilitation support services, so it complements the technical support services through DWR, and this is where we had Stantec Consulting. They were big help when it came to preparing for public meetings, especially as our GSPAC meetings. helping with the communication engagement outreach plan. So as a reminder, that application has been well submitted into DWR, waiting just for the final sign off, but crossing our fingers that by our May GSPAC meeting, so next month, we'll have our Stantec team back on board helping us with the facilitation of our GSPAC calls. So things are moving along with that application, and I'm excited to have Stantec back in our assistance as it relates to GSPAC, outreach, engagement, etc. Any questions about that? Go ahead, Sarah.
Marina, I completely, when are they expected to come on? I'm sorry, that didn't stick in my head.
No, that's totally fine. We're hoping that they are able to join us for our May 26th GSPAC meeting. So next month, yeah. And then if anything changes, I will definitely let folks know ahead of time, but from my understanding, things are smooth sailing to have them on board by next month. David. Oh, there you go.
Hi, Marina. So just remind me, please, how are these multi-completion wells going to be paid for? And where is that money coming from?
William, take it away.
I believe he stepped away from his computer.
Okay. Are you talking about the wells, David, from DWR?
Yeah, so that, I guess maybe I missed that. So those will be DWR funded and owned and controlled wells.
Correct. Yep, and that is through the technical support services that we applied for. So similar to the facilitation support services, we submit an application through the state, they review it, they approve or deny it, right? And I say free, free services to us. It helps us build that capacity that we're lacking in terms of the installation, management, et cetera. So that will be funded through the state, through their technical support services in their SGMO, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Office.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so let's go ahead and shimmy on over. Agenda item 4, we have a friend from the California Water Board here, John Murphy. You're able to pop on. I'm not quite sure if I can see you.
Yep, I'm here.
Cool, thanks, John. All right,
morning.
so I invited John to speak with us. Go ahead and move on over. So folks in the Big Valley Groundwater Basin and area, they did receive an immediate action needed to keep water in Clear Lake creeks as it relates to the Clear Lake hitch. So I asked John just to do a quick overview of this letter. We have some of these letters. If you haven't seen them, I'm more than happy to email it to folks. And then the advisory committee should have received these emails or this letter via email. And then John's also just going to do a quick update as it relates to the hitch, what his team is doing, how you can be involved. And I'll go ahead and pass it over to John. Do you want me to stop sharing my screen, John?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great. I got just like 5 or 6 slides here to keep me on track.
Thank you.
Let's see. All right, so hopefully my slide is coming up there. So good morning, everyone. I'm John Murphy. I'm a senior geologist with the State Water Board's Division of Water Rights. So I've been working on the Clear Lake Hitch project for a few months now. I think most on this call are probably familiar with the hitch, so I don't need to dive in too deep, but this is an issue that wasn't really known to us until a December emergency summit that was hosted by primarily a Big Valley band of Pomo Indians, but several tribes in the region. So after that meeting, we kind of were able to devote some resources and staff to this project and the problem dealing with threats to the Clear Lake hitch and its future survival. So we've been pretty busy. We're still pretty, I guess, not as new into the effort now, but a few months into the effort. So we're still pretty new to this project. And we've kind of taken on a project manager role, I guess you could say. So a lot of potential solutions or issues to address aren't necessarily in the water board's jurisdictional authority. So part of our role here is bringing in other state agencies, working with the county, outreach to some local coalitions, primarily in the agricultural industry, to identify issues, make sure the issue is known, and help spread the word, and putting on things like workshops, meetings, engagement efforts, all that good stuff. So On this presentation here is just kind of an overview of everything we've been working on, and some high level updates. So as Marina mentioned, we issued a voluntary actions letter that Marina was showing just before my presentation here in February, on February 15th. This was shortly after some informational sessions. So in January, I believe, at the end of January, we held some Zoom informational sessions that had pretty good turnout to kind of present the problem and start to get the word out about the Clear Lake hitch and the need to protect it and find solutions to have long-term effects to foster the habitat and sustainability of the hitch moving forward. So we followed up those info sessions with the voluntary actions letter on February 15th. Is issued to about 2,600 people. So in the map here, not sure if my cursor shows up, but everybody in blue roughly received a letter. It was mostly targeted to agricultural entities because they're of course, the primary water user in the area. And of course, the Big Valley area is definitely a high focus. So we're really focused on these 5 or 6 streams here: Coal Creek, Kelsey Creek, Adobe Creek, Manning, and then Scotts and Middle Creek are kind of our focus areas. And the voluntary action letter, hopefully most of you on the call have seen it or received a copy of it in the mail or by email. But basically, it was a quick presentation of the problem, overview of the issue, and suggested ways to help. So some of those suggestions included reducing diversions and pumping when you can, coordinating timing of diversions and pumping, pursuing non-water methods for frost protection, such as fans, and then using storage reservoirs instead of pumping from groundwater when you can. So the hitch spawning season's primarily in the spring. So right now, actually, we're in the middle of a season right now. So most, to our understanding anyway, most of the water use or significant water use in the spring is really only tied to frost protection. So a lot of these solutions are tied towards reducing water pumping, primarily groundwater pumping, during frost protection season when the hitch are spawning and rearing. So these solutions, trying to basically, we know most of the water use in the Big Valley area and throughout the Clear Lake area comes from groundwater. So we're trying to get growers or water users to time their pumping so that not everybody's turning their pump on at the same time. The interaction, as we were just alluding to, the interaction between groundwater and surface water is still kind of a bit of a question for us. We don't know the exact impact of that. So until we can get a better handle on that, we're hoping that people can work together to kind of coordinate their pumping efforts or use alternative methods when feasible. Part of that voluntary actions letter also asked for voluntary submission of data, primarily on groundwater data. So for example, we were looking for things like, do you have a groundwater well? How many wells? What's the well's proximity to a stream? What depth is it screened at? Pumping rate? Just things to help us get a better sense of what's the groundwater surface water interaction, because of course the fear is that too much groundwater pumping takes water from these surface water streams, and then the hitch either gets stranded, can't spawn upstream, or juveniles can't hatch and return to the lake. So that was the letter issued in February. Got a couple dozen responses or so from that, but we're still kind of getting responses coming in. So that was the informational actions letter, voluntary actions letter. Last month in March, we kind of then followed up with our board. So of course, we're the State Water Board, we report to an actual board. So we had an afternoon informational session for our board. So I took the whole afternoon, and the presentation panel, all the members are listed here, but members included Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians, the California Natural Resources Agency, Department of Fish and Wildlife, Department of Food and Ag, Will Weiss with the Lake County Land Stewards, which is kind of a new coalition looking at compiling data from growers and hopefully submitting that data to us in a usable form that we can use to make decisions on. Lake County Farm Bureau, I think I saw Rebecca on the call here, and also Robinson Rancheria of Pomo Indians. And then State Water Board also gave a brief update at that as well. So after presenting the informational items to the board kind of had thoughts and discussions and suggested paths forward for us, for staff. And so some of those responses included organizing a local workshop on diversion measurement and reporting for surface water diverters. I'll give a little update of that at the end here. They asked that we work with Will Weiss and the Lake County land stewards on their proposal. So we've been in touch with them, and also to continue pursuing compliance and enforcement actions. Most of our focus right now is on surface water diversion measurement and reporting is our primary focus right now. But we're also investigating complaints and tips for other areas too, or wastes of surface water use. We're investigating those complaints as well. And then the board asked for an updated session this summer, so you should see another board item sometime later this summer, June, July or so. So some staff activities kind of been happening in the background. So as I mentioned, we're trying to get a better handle on groundwater surface water interaction. This being the Big Valley meeting, most of our knowledge comes from the Big Valley GSP. So for example, we've been trying to do some basic modeling, like this graph here is just a 1D modeling looking at the impact of a stream at a given pumping rate and the impact from a pumping well and its impact on a surface water stream. So basically the thought is here, the closer a well is to a stream, the more impact it has on water availability in that stream. And then, you know, based on the pumping rate and depth of the well, it can have more of an impact. So we're trying to get a sense of that. So we're doing some technical analyses around that. Looking at groundwater data in the Big Valley area and throughout the Clear Lake watershed. So the wells that were shown earlier, I think I got a little graph. Yeah, we're looking at different ways to visualize groundwater changes, you know, going back to like late 1940s, seeing what groundwater's been doing over time, especially given the droughts. So we're looking at groundwater data and well surveys. We're looking at Department of Water Resources well data and also Lake County Environmental Health Department. And then trying to assess, you know, what sort of impact frost protection could have on surface water availability. So that's kind of our desktop evaluation. We also have a fieldwork component. So we've been going out to conduct stream flow measurements. We weren't able to go out the past few weeks because of the rains and it wasn't safe to get into the streams. But we returned yesterday. So we were out in the field yesterday, I think mostly on Adobe Creek, taking some stream flow measurements. We've also installed a stream gauge on Adobe Creek and looking for more potential gauging options this spring. And then there's been a lot of meetings, a lot of presentations at events like this. So we have bi-weekly now, I guess, task force meetings and monthly implementation team meetings to address problems, solutions, paths forward. There's been some media engagement, of course. So we've been outreaching with media and reaching out to local stakeholder groups, primarily in the agricultural industry. And we're also trying to identify funding resources to address some of these issues, especially when it comes to habitat restoration. And then, of course, compliance and enforcement, which is the unit I oversee, has also been working in the background. So ways to get involved, at least with the State Water Board side of things. We do have a website. That's the URLs here, or you can scan a QR code right here. Hopefully that'll work. And on that website, you'll find a link to the January info sessions. There's also a link to a PDF of the voluntary letter. If you lost it or you want to look at it again, feel free to go to our website. There's a link for it there. The board meeting presentation, the PDF of the PowerPoint is on the website, and also a link to the recording of the board meeting from March is up there, and then some other information on there. At the bottom of our website, there's also an informational email list sign up. So you can sign up there. We're trying to maintain somewhat consistent communication through emails, but I don't think we're overloading people with emails. And then feel free, you can contact me personally, or you can contact me through our Clear Lake Hitch email address as well. And so I just heard from Rebecca, I don't, maybe a half hour before this call. I think we're looking at an April 24th date for a water measurement regulation workshop. So I'm meeting with my team this afternoon on that workshop. So hopefully we'll start getting the announcement out and the word out. That will be in person. I think the location's to be determined, but we'll get an announcement soon, definitely by next week. And we can hold more than one workshop too. We can hold workshops on different categories or topics as well. If there's interest, we're happy to do that. And then of course, stay tuned for a summer board item. So the hitch are running. So here's just a quick little video. I think this is on Coal Creek, maybe 2 weeks ago now, of some hitch running up on Coal Creek. I guess some other issues we're seeing right now, we're hearing a lot about fish stranding events. So we're seeing a lot of flooding and then hitch are being stranded on private property. If you do see that, feel free to shoot us an email. We can get you in touch with those who are conducting rescue efforts if you see any stranded hitch in the area. So just to conclude here real quick, so we're still early in the effort. We're not sure what solutions we're going to have just yet. There's probably going to be a plethora of solutions that are needed. So it's not just, water availability in the streams. We also have Clear Lake, the lake itself, issues with legacy mercury, harmful algal blooms. And we're looking at, there's vegetation issues, sediment buildup. So there's a lot of potential solutions to work on, a lot to keep us busy for the foreseeable future. But we're continuing to coordinate, engage, outreach, conduct workshops. Happy to present at this, Marina, if you want like a standing item for a few months. We're happy to present at this to give like brief little updates on a quarterly basis. That should be no problem. And then feel free to reach out if you have any questions or if you want to get more involved or see what's going on, feel free to let us know. So with that, I think I'll take any questions and thanks for your time.
Thank you, John. And just to know, I definitely believe there is interest to have your team report on a quarterly basis.
Sure.
So I'll be in touch with you and we'll just have this as a standing agenda item. So with that being said, I will go ahead. I believe I saw Pat's hand first. If you wanna go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah, John, I've got a question for you. You kind of mentioned you guys are taking the lead on this and there's a lot of different agencies involved. Can you tell the group what monitoring the hitch run this year? Are you guys doing that yourself? Every agency doing that? I'm just curious on how much effort's going into that.
That's mostly going to be, it's mostly Big Valley Band of Pomoidians, Indians. It's mostly Robinson Rancheria and CDFW, Department of Fish and Wildlife. So we're not doing too much of the monitoring of the hitch runs itself or the hitch rescues.
Maybe Sarah, could you comment on what you're seeing so far?
Sure. Actually, I think it would be really helpful if I could share my screen about some data that just
Sure.
came in from CDFW. Like John said, there's been so much rain that the creeks have overflown their boundaries, right? And we've all seen it, a lot of water in the ditches, in people's yards, on agricultural lands. It's just tons of water everywhere. And with the extra rains, some of them have been able to scoot themselves back into the creeks where they came from. But early on in March, we started to see a number of fish that were getting stranded, especially in Coal Creek. So Coal Creek seemed to be really the problem area. We also have added sort of Manning Creek to that issue as well. And of course, we're considering that it's a combination of things that have built up in the creeks that are not allowing it to kind of have that full space that it normally would. Of course, a lot of rain came in as well. So it really points to the need for better management of the creek beds. And removal of vegetation and things like that, so it doesn't overflow the creek banks as much. But there have in March there were, I believe, about 500 hitch or chai that had to be rescued from some of these areas that were disconnecting from the creeks to the creeks themselves. And so a lot of those fish just got moved further downstream, basically toward the lake, thinking that, if they haven't spawned yet, if they can spawn in a place where there's most likely going to be water, then there won't be a need to rescue the newly hatched. But we already know there's going to be a need to rescue the newly hatched, and that is a lot more dangerous operation for the safety of, newly hatched fish. And really what they need is another 6 to 8 weeks of flow, plenty of flow, to get them back to the lake. So primarily Manning and Coal have been the problem creeks with disconnection of flow and overflow. And then what's been interesting, there have been some dead hitch I think the last count that I saw that was in late March was about 25. And those were mostly seemed to be eaten by animals. A lot of them were missing their heads, like chewed off. But what was interesting is what's going on simultaneously is some electrofishing that Ben Ewing is doing. And he just sent over a graph of what the numbers have been looking like of the hedge in the electrofishing. And let me share my screen for that. So 2023 is this line right here. So what he's doing is going to the 4 areas that are in it's Adobe, I think it's Adobe Creek, Clear Lake State Park, Canocte Vista Marina, and one other location that maybe one of you guys know.
Holiday Harbor.
Holiday Harbor, okay. And so these are the number of hitch that they're seeing in 2023 at these spots, and he goes weekly, and then you can see that comparison with other years. So 2020 had, a big jump that was happening. So it's a lot fewer that are being seen in the mouths of the creeks where he's doing the electrofishing. Now it could be because they're all upstream, right? They're all spawning, they're all upstream. But we're going out daily to all of the creeks in Big Valley in multiple locations, and have been doing that since February. And we're, there's a couple spots where we saw a lot of fish. We're tracking all of that. We're not putting it in Clerk's thing, by the way, if you're wondering. So the data's not in there, it's a different place. We believe that a lot of the fish have made it back to the lake. A lot of the adults have made it back to the lake. So now what we're watching is for for the eggs to hatch, and then once we start seeing the fry, making sure that and working with the public to make sure that there's going to be continuity of flow so that they can get back to the creeks. Because even if you electrofish them on the really small ones, that's not, they don't all make it if you do that. So we really don't want to do that. And they're really hard to catch when they're that tiny. So that's basically it. I mean, so it's showing that the electrofishing, that the numbers are pretty, are lower compared to previous years, going to the exact same places, doing the exact same consistent, standard way of measuring it in the same locations. And then in terms of the numbers that we're seeing and the rescues, of course, we're seeing a lot more rescues than we have in previous years, but I think it's also because there's a lot more eyes on the creeks, specifically looking for these things.
Thank you, Sarah, for that information.
Sure.
All right, any other questions regarding the Clear Lake Hitch monitoring efforts, State Water Board role?
I have another question for Sarah, if that's all right, Marina.
Yeah, go ahead, Rebecca.
I'm curious, Sarah, if there's an estimate of in-creek sightings.
Well, let me share my screen of another thing that's really cool. This is, so the tribes got together for this year and are pooling all of our data, and I just want to show you an example of that. So get in there. So hitch and start spawning. So we've, going back to February, like everybody's putting their data in the spreadsheet with locations and numbers of fish. There's not a lot of fish that have been seen in the outside of Big Valley. There have been a few, but the water's also very murky, in the Middle Creek and also in the creeks of the lower arm. So there's a few spots now. Just one thing you always have to be careful. Okay, so it's Coal Creek. So there were 1,000 fish seen in this one location on Coal Creek in mid-March. you know, lots of smaller groups. There's a 500 right there. So a couple 500s. And that one is Cole. Yeah, same. Everybody likes Miley's place. It's really a good spot. So it's basically the numbers are you know, we have nothing to compare it to in terms of like an intensive, you know, observation program, at least for Big Valley. But it has been, we certainly are seeing more hitch than what was reported last year. But you can't just like add them all up, right? You can't just say, oh, this 500 from this day gets to be added to this 500 from this day, because they are, you know, they're making their way up and they're making their way back down. So we haven't really assessed that part of it yet, but it is, you know, we are tracking them. And Cole and Adobe and Manning are the main places that we've seen them. We've seen some in Forbes and Kelsey as well, a few in Kelsey and Thompson Creek. So the Big Valley Creeks definitely have some hitch in them.
Sarah, is that information somewhere where everyone can see it, or you guys just, is that just, you have access to it?
We are planning on, so we're figuring out ways to, so I don't know if it's going to be available like live, you know, at this point, because this is our first year of doing it. We're going back and basically doing quality control on it. But Big Valley's plan is to put Big Valley's data into the Water Quality Exchange. So it becomes part of the National Water Quality Portal. And so you can go on and get all the info on there. So we're working toward that. And we have an agreement actually with CDFW to put our data into there. But in terms of the observations and how they are, how we're communicating that to the state since they're out in the creeks, is, we're basically kind of giving them the numbers that we're seeing. But again, it's not like you can just add every observation that you have. We're also watching for, just frost protection and how that's occurring in the Big Valley area. So, we're just doing a lot of observations of how things are happening, and we're going to be making that available in some fashion as well. But yeah, we definitely don't plan on sitting on this data. I don't know about the other tribes. I think Robinson's going to be putting their information along with ours, but I'm not sure about Habemetal, Upper Lake, and I'm also not sure about Coy, because they're out there doing the creeks of the lower of the Clear Lake and Lower Lake area. But and we also have some great photos, so and videos. So we'll be organizing this a little bit better and making it available for sure. I had some questions for John.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. John, could you please talk about, there was, you didn't really go into it in your presentation, but you were talking about enforcement. And I know one of the issues that was in your, the water board slides at that water boards meeting was the lack of documentation by the surface water users on the creeks, and how it was, I think how it was stated was that half the users didn't even turn in their water sediment diversion uses, which is a requirement, and the other half turned in very poor water quality data. And I thought that was really important. I mean, I think it's an important thing to mention for this Big Valley group, because this was a topic that came up. It was kind of a point of contention, like, what are you talking about? We do this, it's fine, it's all good. And then I'm hearing from you guys like, no, actually it's not all good. The data's bad. and half people didn't even turn in anything. So, you know, I'm just wondering if you could talk about how, just in terms of how the water boards uses that information, how important it is to, you know, why it's even there, why you collect the information, what you do with it.
Sure, yeah. So I remember off the top of my head here, but in the Clear Lake watershed, roughly the Clear Lake watershed, I think there are 225 water rights. So that means there's 225 entities that can use surface water for various beneficial uses, we call them, mostly agriculture, irrigation in the Big Valley area. Of those 225 water rights, they all have to submit an annual report that basically summarizes how much water they used. And I think, if I'm remembering right, about half submitted a report, or something about half. So we didn't have good submission rates, so we'll be following up there. Of the 225, those who divert more than 10 acre feet per year have to measure or meter their diversions and submit that with their annual report. So of the 225, 100 of them are subject to that, or about 100. And basically all of the submissions had some sort of issue with them. So our approach now is we're kind of going after the biggest diverters first, because they use the most water, and then kind of working our way down as we move through the process, or compliance and enforcement process. So it's important because it gives us a sense of who the big diverters are, who the big surface water users are, so that we have a better idea of water availability. So kind of doing water availability analysis. And that's important for allowing us to, you know, make decisions on whether we can issue more water rights, or more diversions, or more appropriations, whatever term you want to use. So it's important for us to know how much water is being used, so that we have an idea of how much water is available, and whether or not we could approve additional diversions moving forward. And this is even more important as we go into drought years. So in drought years, when there's less water, less precipitation, we've been doing curtailments, which have impacted the whole Delta watershed, and Clear Lake's part of the Delta watershed in the big scheme. So based on your water right type and how much water, you could be subject to curtailments or prohibitions from diverting water in dry years. So we really need to have a sense of who's diverting water, how much they're diverting, and how much to curtail them in the dry years. So that's, I guess, a general answer, and happy to go into more details there, Sarah. Or anybody else?
And I know John mentioned it briefly, but part of the workshop that we'll be hosting on April 24th is on, you know, surface water reporting as well.
Yep.
So hopefully to kind of combine an education component there, in addition to the on permitting that's going to be talked about as well. So
yeah, and it's pretty confusing. It's confusing for us too. So the measurement and reporting requirements, they were enacted, I think, 6 years ago or so now. So for the state agency, it's still pretty new. So we're still trying to figure out, you know, what data we need, how to submit it. And we actually have some interim guidance that we're deploying to Clear Lake that will provide more guidance on how to submit data and what kind of form we need the data in.
It must be really confusing instructions or something.
Yeah, it is. And also our database is pretty antiquated. ERIMS.
That is true.
Yeah.
That thing is really a bear to work with.
Yep.
Yeah, and I just, you know, since we're talking about stuff, I did notice that the water boards did send out a notice of violation to Yolo County for not reporting, and also Lake County Watershed Protection District for not reporting on their use for Highland Springs and also the Kelsey Creek detention structure. So, I mean, I feel like, you know, if this group is supposed to be about managing groundwater, then, you know, there are regulations that the entities need to be responsible for, including just the, you know, the standard surface water users, and how, you know, there's a lot of assumptions made in the development of the groundwater sustainability plan, which hopefully are being unpacked very carefully by the agencies. But if we don't even have, you know, accurate water use by by the big users. And the water boards doesn't necessarily take a look that closely until somebody absolutely has to throw a fit. Then I'm just, I'm concerned that, this group takes that seriously and that Lake County takes it seriously, because we're talking about a Sigma state law and a basin that is supposed to be managed for multiple uses, not just agriculture, not just any other use, but all of the uses, which includes enough water for something like a listed species. So I would love to hear from how the entities, this sort of thing can be fixed, and people reporting on time and reporting their uses and being accurate and having good information.
Yes, and we are working with Yolo County and Lake County. We actually met with Marina yesterday on a path forward for metering and procuring that and data submission. And Yolo County, I think we're meeting with Yolo County tomorrow on theirs as well.
And I just want to clarify, the violation was for improper measuring device, which there is none, which we had.
Correct.
So reports were submitted, but yeah, you're right, Sarah. It needs to be accurate information. So yes, we do have a path forward. We'll be installing some measuring devices on those infrastructure detention structure, even though we haven't been able to operate it the last few years. And then same with Highland Springs Reservoir. So we'll be sure to provide updates to the group as well moving forward.
Yeah, I think it can be confusing even if you're not diverting per the regulation. If you have the capacity to divert, you're subject to the reporting requirements and measuring requirements.
Right. And then in this term, with both of them, the diversion for Highland Springs would just be the water held in the reservoir. That would be the diversion. And then when it comes to the detention structure, when we do operate that structure, the diversion would be the groundwater recharge. So
correct.
Not fully diverting water, which I know there is some confusion, but just want to make that clarification. Because yeah, it is confusing, John. I know.
Yes.
And there's lots of dialogue on that.
Yep.
Any other questions for John? If there are questions, I know, John, you do have to hop off to another call. If there are questions, I know that John did provide his contact information. Please feel free to reach out to him directly or send me any questions that you have down the line. I can more than happy to put you in contact with John, but John, I will follow up with you and hope that you can come back for our May GSPAC meeting just to provide an additional update. And then Sarah, might be nice to reach out to you to see if there's any information that you would like to provide too as it relates to the hitch. I think it's important for us to have this as a standing item. And then I'll be sure any other GSPAC members, if you have any information, please feel free to give it to me so I can include it in the slideshow, but we'll always have the standing item moving forward. So cool.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you so much, John, for your
thanks everyone.
Appreciate it very much. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen again, and we will continue to move along. All right, you guys can see agenda item 5, correct? Great, okay, cool. All right, so we are moving on to agenda item 5, which is our groundwater sustainability plan updates and next steps. So I want to just highlight agenda item 5, which is outcomes of our Big Valley GSP planning grant. As a reminder, we were able to utilize funds granted by the California Department of Water Resources to develop our GSP. I just want to highlight some of our key outcomes that we were able to achieve through this grant, which you all were a part of the process, very much so. But I just want to highlight it now that that grant is in the final stages of closing with the state. So Water Resources staff, William Box, had done a great job of ensuring that we provided all quarterly progress reports. Our admin staff did a great job of ensuring that we met all invoices as well and backup documentation. Very tedious process. If you're familiar with grants, it's not the funnest part of the grant, but it is important for us to ensure that everyone is being held accountable and that we are meeting our deliverables that are outlined in the signed grant agreement. We were able to then complete our final grant completion report. We developed an outreach and communication plan, presentations and materials for all public meetings. So all the public meetings that we had during the development of our GSP, including ad hoc committee meetings, we were able to provide those slides and all meeting summaries to the California Department of Water Resources. The GSA adopted GSP proof that the GSP was adopted by the Sigma timeline. And that was through the DWR Sigma portal. Well, our GSP is still being reviewed by the state. And then also the public data portal development and the listserv monitoring and outreach program. I have 2 asterisks by those because those are our most recent ventures and tasks that we were able to complete. And William, I don't know if you're on the call and you want to elaborate a little bit more on both, but we did do the live demo a few GSPAC meetings ago, and I know William threw it up again, of that data sharing portal. And then we are in the process now of updating our listserv. We're going to use this the first time for our next GSPAC meeting. And then we're also going to be just sharing overall Big Valley updates. So another opportunity, if if Sarah, if you and your team are finding reportings of hitch, this is a good opportunity if you want to use our Big Valley Sigma portal, or excuse me, our Big Valley listserv. We can provide any updates and information to the community via that platform as well. So William, do you want to elaborate a little bit more on this listserv and how this is going to work and how we're planning on using it down the line?
Yeah, the good thing about the listserv is it has like a lot of analytical features. So we'll really be able to kind of see who's actually opening our emails, who's clicking on our links, and we can actually be tracking a lot more who's being involved in it. So if people aren't using certain things, then we'll know that we need to change it up and do different types of processes to get people involved. So it's just a lot better for us to understand how our outreach is going, how we can improve it, and how we can improve our tools that members of the public are hopefully using. So keep your eye on the lookout for that, and hopefully give us any feedback if stuff doesn't look good or is not usable. Let us know so we can modify it, and so it's beneficial for you all.
And right now, when I say listserv, so we send out our quarterly meeting reminders and agendas and materials. We send that out either via admin staff, our front desk staff, Kelly, or myself. So you being able to utilize this listserv, it's going to just be more cohesive and efficient when we do that outreach and engagement. David.
Marina, do you know when we can expect DWR to approve or disapprove, hopefully not, the GSP?
I am not quite sure. I know they're working hard. I don't know if Quinn is still on the call.
Hi, I'm still here. Unfortunately, I can't give you a much more satisfying answer than Marina just gave. We have our first round of reviews out, but those were for some of the critically overdrafted basins. As for when Lake County, Big Valley will actually get their determination, I can't really say, unfortunately. That's going to be a question for Sigmo, and I don't even know if they're willing to put a timeline on it just yet. And give themselves a due date.
And thank you, Quinn, for that update. And there is, if you guys go on the DWR website, William, I'm wondering if you can find where you can put in your email, if you can get routine updates from the Sigma office, if you haven't received that. But I do know that they do provide updates on any comments or any if they've approved or disapproved a GSP. So that's an opportunity to follow along. I know that we're subscribed, and I hope we find out before everyone gets an email via that listserv, but William will include that link to the chat if folks want to follow along and subscribe to DWR's Sigma office email listserv.
Can I ask Quinn also, have any been approved? I've heard a number of them have been disapproved or critiqued or whatever the word is. Have any been approved so far?
Yeah, I think, don't quote me on my numbers, but I believe something like 12 determinations came out in early March, and I believe 6 of those were rejected and 6 of those were approved.
Thank you.
And going off that, I was going to ask, most of them are approved with modifications, though. There's none that have been approved outright.
That is correct by my understanding, yes.
And I believe if they're not approved, then the water boards gets involved.
I think you have 180 days for corrections, and then if you don't meet those corrections, then that is correct, sir.
I think they get involved even before that, and they come up with a plan of action. That's what the water boards was. I was at a meeting I was at a Sigma meeting.
Do you want to speak on that, John? Are you still?
Yeah, I'm still here. I know we step in if they're not improved. I'm not sure of the timelines though. I can reach out to our Sigma group, but that isn't my area. Sorry.
And not, I don't want to hope for that, but I think it will be important for us as a group just to keep that in mind of next steps in terms of, you know, the status of our GSP, whether the state decides to approve it or not. So I definitely think that we can have an agenda item next GSPAC meeting during our May meeting, just to dive deeper into the details of that. So I can see if I can get someone from the state and, you know, talking with Quinn a little bit more about the specifics of that. So I'll make a note for myself. All right, anything else as it relates to our grant? Thank you, Quinn and John, for your input on that.
If you need a water board Sigma contact, let me know, Marina. I can give you a name.
Okay, great, appreciate it.
Yep.
All right. Okay. So moving on over, I just want to highlight the updates on our Big Valley application for Sigma implementation grant. So again, we were able to receive funds for the planning, and we were able to submit an application with the help from a few of you for funding for the implementation now of our GSP. Even though it's not approved or disapproved yet, this is a funnel of an opportunity for funding, and we do really want to try and get those, especially we don't know how the funding opportunities are going to look down the line. It is still recommended by the state that we try and submit an application and get funding for a GSP, whether it's approved or not approved at the moment. So I just want to highlight some of the components that we applied for. We should be finding out, fingers crossed, in June, summerish, if we did get funding through this program. So I will keep you all updated, but the overall goal is just to try to keep the costs as low as possible for Sigma compliance and GSA administration for our groundwater basin. And I'll highlight that again down later on into the presentation. But we requested funding for grant administration. So again, quarterly reporting, oversight of the grant that costs staff time and money. So hoping to get funding for that. GSP implementation, outreach, and compliance activities. So again, what is required by Sigma? What do we have to meet? What are we supposed to do to ensure that we are maintaining and ensuring sustainability? Of course, ongoing monitoring, data gaps. We acknowledge we have data gaps and network enhancements. A well recharge and domestic well program, Adobe Creek conjunctive use project, and then groundwater and stormwater recharge feasibility study project. So we aimed high, hoping that we get all the funding, but acknowledging that there is a smaller pot of money, and all of the medium and high priority basins are trying to pull money from the same pot. So hoping to aim high, hoping to get all the funding for everything that we asked for, but acknowledging that we might have to make modifications and bump some of these things down into priority and seek other grant opportunities for. So just wanted to give an update on that, hoping to get more clarification in the next few GSPAC meetings regarding the status of that. But if we find anything out before our next GSPAC meeting, you all will be the first to know. So crossing our fingers and hoping we get some more funding through our friends at DWR. Any questions, comments? All right, so again, just highlighting our Big Valley GSP reporting timeline. So we were able to submit our first annual report, April 21st, 2023. We onboarded Ludorf Scalmanini consulting firm to help us develop the majority of this annual report, and then water resources staff, including Mitchell and William, did a lot of this work as well. And we were able to submit that before the deadline. Again, even though our GSP is not officially approved, we still are required to submit annual reports. We are required to submit these reports every year, and then we will also have a 5-year update as well. So again, working very collaboratively with you all to review the data, collect data, still identify data gaps, and hoping that we can enhance our monitoring network in the next year or so to really get the best accurate and available data. Any questions on this? And then of course, the date by all groundwater basins must achieve their sustainability goal is April 21st, 2042, as outlined by Sigma. Sarah.
You might have just mentioned about it. I didn't think I catch it or caught it. how do you expect, or how do you want GSPAC to be involved in the review of the things going in the annual reports?
Yeah, that's a good question, Sarah. So I'm hoping that, as we talked about GSPAC 2.0, right? How is that going to look? It's going to look a lot different than just planning and, reviewing chapters, right? When it comes to the annual reports, and things were pretty rushed for us in just terms of, we had an annual report. Seems like we just submitted our GSP and another, report, and then we had another annual report. But with these dates in mind, we can be more, we can be better proactive and have GSPAC members help look at the data, really address any data gaps that there might be, things for us to keep in mind. So I know that in our GSP, we outline the hitch, right? So looking at any data that's coming down the line that we feel might be important to include, as it relates to stream flow, et cetera, groundwater pumping in the basin as it relates to the hitch, looking at data, again, collaboration and management opportunities. I know, Sarah, we've talked to your team about possible opportunities, and we've recently applied for a grant with you guys, for some possible groundwater monitoring opportunities, but really just looking at the GSPAC to work with us, review any chapters of the annual report, get a strong understanding of what it takes to develop an annual report. If we feel that we need to have that in a GSPAC meeting, we can totally cover over the ins and outs of the annual report, what the state requires and how it reflects to our Big Valley Basin. And then just, again, looking at data and fact checking as well. Sarah.
I would just recommend maybe calendarizing it, like, just so if you know that it's due at a certain time and we're only meeting, how often are we meeting? Are we meeting quarterly?
Quarterly.
Okay, so it's not really many times. Yeah, so just like with the Blue Ribbon Committee and all these other things that, there's absolute strong deadlines. If there's certain things that you want any feedback on, or we have an opportunity to comment on it, which I really hope there is, it sounds like there will be, that, it gets, so the next meeting is in, did you say May?
Yeah, May 20th.
Oh, that's right, because of February that got moved. Okay, so it sounds like we, well, I guess by the next meeting there should be a draft or something, or the draft started to be put together. It's pretty quick. Jeez, but yeah, since we're only meeting quarterly, if we could have things shared early so that we can work on it and comment on it, that's what my request is.
Okay, and I will definitely take that request. I agree. I love having calendar invites because it helps hold us accountable. And I think even just a timeline on our water resources, Big Valley GSP website would be beneficial as well. And then there was something else. Oh, so similar to how we had ad hoc committees, right, for our GSP planning, I definitely think that we can have some sort of ad hoc committees too, and meet on a more regular basis, if appropriate, for the annual report. As well. Just because we meet quarterly doesn't mean we can't hold additional meetings as well. If that is something of interest that the GSPAC wants to do, if they want to meet every other month, that's something that we can totally consider as a group. We had that opportunity. William, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I was going to say, so basically the annual report just uses the water level data from the previous year, and then you feed that into the model that had been developed by our consultants, and then we use basically the results from the model and plug it in. And a lot of it is just filling in templates. It's not a lot. It's not nearly like the GSP, how in depth it was with kind of the analysis of it. It's kind of just more reporting, updated numbers related to groundwater levels, and then how that fed into the data, and then updated climate data and updated land use data. Those are kind of like, I would say, the 3 or 4 things that have been included in it. And so the water level data that's fed into it is collected like October 1 or whatever. It's because the water year goes from September to September. So you're basically using data from like September, October. So you'd really only have one if we're having quarterly meeting, and then it's due April 1. There'd be only one quarterly meeting in between when you'd get that data and then when the report is due. Essentially, you have like 3 months, 4 months from when the data that is being collected needs to be evaluated or submitted to DWR. So I think it would be best if people want to be reviewing that to review it like independently rather than having meetings. But we can definitely have at least one meeting, but multiple meetings or like an ad hoc, kind of like what Marina's talking about. There is not that much time from when the data is collected to when it needs to be submitted to DWR. So I think reviewing independently would be the best way forward, but definitely we can share that data as soon as we collect it. This year it was really quick. I got all the data back from our consultants like days before I needed to be submitted to DWR.
Thank you, Will. Go ahead, Sarah.
Well, I mean, as you know, we did not like the GSP. We had some problems with the GSP. We made those views known and also submitted stuff to DWR. We'll see what they say about it. But my hope is that I mean, the model as it stands right now was certainly missing a lot of information, also using anecdotal information as a kind of a key part of the frost protection aspect of the model. So I really hope that I really think there needs to be an opportunity for corrective action of anything that's found to be incorrect in terms of how you're going to plug in data. Especially it could, because it really puts us on a course that's not entirely accurate. So I'm hoping that instead of waiting 5 years for the 5-year update, that it's any corrective action that becomes known, even in terms of we're doing a GDE project and plan on sharing all of that information, so it could be helpful in terms of a more accurate GSP. So are you so to the extent that an annual report can include corrective course information, that would be really good, because it means that it's more accurate.
And the good thing about our annual reports is, even though they are due on a certain date, you can still edit them afterwards. So we can still, after everything is submitted, we can still make edits and changes or add new documents if we make other findings or other determinations that what we've previously submitted is not correct. We can make those edits or changes. We don't have to wait until that next annual report or that next 5-year update. We can do it in the interim.
Great. Thank you. Sarah, do you have anything else to say on that? No? Okay. Anyone else? All right. Moving forward. So money, yay. Reporting and finance update. This is more just a quick little note. This is going to be a focus item for our May GSPAC meeting. Previously, we did have the ad hoc committee finance meeting, and I know a few of you participated in that. And we talked a little bit about how we were going to fund the GSP, how is it going to look for our basin, et cetera. We still haven't made much movement on that. Of course, the priority was just getting the GSP in. And we are actively seeking, again, funding opportunities to try and keep the cost as minimal as possible for the basin. So please email me if you want to get back onto that ad hoc committee. If you were a part of it, please send me an email. I already have that note, but it wouldn't hurt to send me an email as a reminder. Or if you want to be engaged in those conversations, send me an email. Either way, we'll be using our listserv to just sending those notices out when we do have those ad hoc committee meetings. And here at the slide below, I do just have a rough estimate based off our GSP and just other resources that we've been able to utilize of how much roughly we think that Sigma compliance and GSA administration costs are going to cover. So again, 96% of our basin is outlined in a disadvantaged and severely disadvantaged community. Annual administrative costs, this include meetings, accounting, fee administration, budgeting, legal, insurance, rent, et cetera, all of that group into one, roughly $275,000, with annual monitoring costs expecting $55,000, and then annual report costs $50,000. I want to thank William and Mitchell for building this table. And then just as a note, so on top of grants that we are trying to seek funding for, I also serve on a GSA small coalition where I am actively communicating with legislative to advocate for our basin to try and get additional funding from state and federal state agencies to try and provide assistance for GSA similar to our Big Valley Basin that are considered small underrepresented and disadvantaged communities, and don't have a lot of funds to cover the administration compliance as it relates to Sigma. So we're doing everything that we can to try and seek these funding opportunities and keep these costs as low as possible. But it is going to be important for us to do a fee study down the road and lay out some assessments to the basins and or the properties and parcels and how that looks. We haven't figured that out yet. We're going to get the ball rolling on that. Most likely hire a consultant firm to help us do that. Our department has tried to do these different fee assessments in the past. For example, in 2015 was the last one that we've tried to do, and we've been unsuccessful, but I know other county departments have done so. For example, vector control, they've been successful in the past. So trying to lean on our colleagues in other departments to help with that. But just wanted to bring this back to everyone's attention and letting folks know that we are slowly starting to move forward with how we're going to fund our GSP and our GSA. So with that, I'll take any questions. I know this is not everyone's favorite topic, but we do need to talk about it. Questions, comments? Go ahead, Sarah.
Could you remind me, I remember kind of a tiered decision making process for the fees, and I don't, can you go over that? I don't remember. I mean, I guess it was finalized at least with the last, prior to the submittal of the GSP, but this isn't something that's like going to go out for a vote to like a special vote, right? I mean, it's sort of like if you're a water user, this is going to happen.
Well, and that could be a possibility. It could be going out to vote for the parcel owners. But again, we haven't even figured that out, Sarah. We haven't made movement on that. So it's going to be up to the GSPAC to provide recommendations on what they think should be appropriate. And then we'll bring that to the GSA, because ultimately it's up to the GSA on how they want to handle the actual pay, the financing of our GSA. But that is a possibility. Yeah, it could be, Prop 218 where we go out to vote.
And what's the goal in terms of implementation of this?
Covering the costs to, again, annual.
Oh, I mean, the date, sorry. The date goal.
Oh, the date goal. That's what we'll get. What I'll have in the May meeting. I haven't decided a date, but we do need to start making movement on it. Ideally, at the start of summer, things need to start taking place so they can roll out in the next fiscal year. Next fiscal year being after July 1st. So we do need to start making movement before then. And then as we, knowing that this is going to be a focus point of next meeting, if you guys have any questions or anything that you want me to specifically highlight, go ahead and just email me so I can make sure that I provide that in the presentation. But of course, we'll have public comment period and an opportunity for discussion during the May GSPAC meeting. Any other questions, comments? I would say concerns, but I'm sure there's a lot of concerns. All right, seeing none, we are going to go ahead and move on over. It is 12:51. Do we want to just take a 5-minute restroom break? I'm seeing no, I'm seeing yes. Okay.
Let's get this over with.
Okay, yeah, I think we're gonna be able to get done. Oh, I think we're gonna get done before 2. So yeah, let's just keep going through this. I agree, because my office is stuffy in here. All right, agenda item 6, Big Valley Groundwater Sustainability Plan Advisory Committee business. Pew, pew, pew. All right, so folks did receive the notification. Our Big Valley GSA charter document was approved on February 28th, 2023 by our GSA. So we did have the last few GSPAC meetings going over our charter document, and we were able to look at our charter, what any changes needed to be made. This will be on our water resources website. We will get this up on the water resources website by early next week. I'll work with William to get the 2023 charter. Just as a reminder, the only major change that we had in the charter was adding the additional seat of the underrepresented user, and we'll go into the seats here in the next few slides, and then changing from Sigma planning to now Sigma implementation. So it's crucial for us to have this charter document because it makes us an official advisory committee, and it makes us eligible for more funding, and it gives us as a GSPAC the voice to advocate for our beneficial groups that we represent in our Big Valley groundwater basin. And I do have the link here to that Granicus portal that is ran by Lake County, where you can see all that board material that was submitted, the memorandum and the GSPAC charter, and then it has the recording of the item too, if you want to hear my voice again. I'm not sure why you'd want to, but it's there. So any questions on the approved GSPAC charter? And we will continue just to update this every year. As a reminder, we do have this GSPAC charter, and it does have the names of our GSPAC members and what beneficial group that they represent. Similar to what we've done in the past, if you recall the first GSPAC charter that we had, we did have the vacant seats. So this GSPAC charter that was adopted does outline those vacant seats. And I know that there were some questions about, can the GSA adopt this charter even though not all the seats are filled? Yes, they totally can, because now we can go back to the GSA with recommendations on who we deem appropriate to fill those seats. And we can just continue to make that amendment to the charter and just put in those names of the beneficial user when we fill in those vacant seats, which we hopefully will do sooner than later. Right. Any questions? Cool. All right. So again, our favorite topic, discussion of open GSPAC seats. We still have the same open seats that we have chatted about the past few times. One environmental and ecosystem seat that we are currently looking for. 2 underrepresented user seats. 1 private user domestic well owner seat, and then 1 overall private user seat. So with this, I know I've gotten a few recommendations from some GSPAC members. If you have additional recommendations, please send those my way, ideally with any emails or phone numbers that you may have for those folks, because how we're gonna try and seek to fill in these open seats is we're gonna be preparing a press release, which I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. I can pull up the draft press release that I have, and we can go through it together. Keyword draft here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send this draft press release, what I've created so far, to our GSPAC members, and then hope that in the May meeting, we can finalize the press release and then get this out by end of May. Because once we finalize on our end, it just takes a matter of hours for me to send it to county admin, and they do their job of just releasing the press release. So let me go ahead. Any questions right now?
Yes, this is Val Nixon.
Go ahead, Val.
Yeah, has anybody approached Clear Lake State Park for their resource ecologist to be on the GSPAC?
No, that is the first I've heard of that, but I will definitely.
His name is Ryan Martin.
Okay.
And I can give you the district superintendent's name if you'd like me just to email it to you.
Yeah, that would be great. Because what I'm going to do is, again, I've gotten a few recommendations from a few other folks. Once we have this press release out, I, as the lead for the GSPAC, will personally also send this press release out to those individuals that folks think that might be a good fit to fill in one of these seats. So again, just doing additional outreach and engagement. And let me share my screen.
Okay.
All right. So a lot of this looks familiar. I can go ahead and read this, but a lot of this is honestly taken from the GSPAC charter, but this kind of just gives you all an idea of what this press release would look like. Want to keep it no more than 2 pages, ideally a page, but I do want to make sure that we are clear on what we are looking for. So again, beginning title, Big Valley Groundwater Sustainability Plan Advisory Committee, call for open seats, advocate for a sustainable Big Valley groundwater basin. I am not married to anything that is in here. I'm really looking for input from our GSPAC on how you want this to look and anything that we may miss. So again, I'll send this to all the GSPAC to solicit some comments and feedback. And then we will be able to share those and go through those together during the May meeting. So the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act of 2014, SGMA, provides a framework for sustainable management of groundwater supplies by local authorities. Again, it also requires the formation of GSAs. So again, just highlighting what SGMA is, what we are required to do. Again, the Big Valley GSA will assess groundwater conditions in the Big Valley Basin and create, adopt, and implement a local groundwater sustainability plan. I will link the GSP in here if folks want to take the initiative to look at the GSP and get a better idea of what our GSP is, and then also including links to SGMA, DWR SGMA website as well. The Big Valley GSP Advisory Committee was initially formed in April 2021 to advise the Lake County Board of Supervisors on the development of the Big Valley Basin GSP. After submitting the GSP to the DWR in January 2022, per SGMA requirements, the GSPAC has been rechartered for the implementation of, Rebecca is joining us again, of the Big Valley Basin GSP. So the overall intent of the GSPAC is to provide community stakeholder perspective and participation in local SGMA implementation. As a GSPAC member, it is expected you serve as strong, effective advocate for the interested groups represented, work collaboratively with others, commit time needed for ongoing discussions, collectively reflect a diversity of interests, act as a liaison to communicate information to and from their organizations, and act in a manner that will enhance trust among all interested groups. You will also contribute technical expertise, data, information, eliminate false assumptions, and advance innovation in creating project advice for the area under consideration. Again, that is all taken from our charter document. That is nothing new. The GSPAC is composed as an ad hoc advisory committee of the Big Valley community members, representatives of a variety of groundwater beneficial use as divided by SGMA, which we will link section 10723.2 for folks to do research if they feel wish. I will outline our current seats, which we have 3 agricultural representatives, 1 environmental ecosystem representative, 1 tribal government representative, and 2 urban users. The GSPAC is currently soliciting representatives for the following beneficial user groups: 1 environmental ecosystem representative, 2 underrepresented users, 1 private user, 1 domestic well owner. And then I will end the press release with additional helpful links. I know there's some questions and comments about what is an underrepresented user, any supporting documents provided by CDFW or DWR, any other agency, or some of the NGOs that have done work on some of these beneficial user groups. And of course, how these folks can submit their interest to serving in this role. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Sarah for a question or a comment.
Yeah, I think that other thing that would be helpful to add, and I'm looking to see, I guess it would be in the charter, is, it came up during the last kind of seating of people, how, let's see, what's the right word? Basically what's the criteria for being eligible? The eligibility criteria, that's what it is. So, for example, so the GSPAC is soliciting these representatives. A domestic well owner is, it's got to be somebody in the Big Valley area. Now, in the case of Sky, with the last one, I believe he lived in Scotts Valley, but he had a farm that served his house and his agriculture. And so he qualified for a domestic well owner. And so there's been some decisions, that have been made amongst the whole group, I guess, about what the qualifications are. So I think it would be helpful to put it in here because, there are people who maybe, own property but don't live here, or work here but don't live here. And it would just be good to the extent that the charter spells it out, to provide that eligibility criteria.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah. And I do agree because we have to understand, we've been thinking about these seats and these beneficial users, for the past, 1.5 to 2 years now. This might be news to someone else. So I want to make sure that we're as descriptive as possible to give folks the guidance so they know what they're signing themselves up for and volunteering for. But ultimately, any of these recommendations, again, will then come to the GSPAC for review and consideration. And then it'll be the consensus seeking method that we've used that's outlined in the charter that we've used during the GSP development process as well. And then any of those recommendations with that consensus from GSPAC and, you know, the comments from the GSPAC members will be then sent to the GSA for final consideration and approval or disapproval of the member. All right, thank you, Sarah, for that input. I will definitely outline that in the draft before I send it to the GSPAC for additional comments. All right, any other comments right now on the press release? No? Oh, wow, we really are just rock. Oh, Sarah.
Sorry, I know I brought this up at the last meeting. I know you said there was no money for this, but I just wanted to point out that, you know, there is definitely the case that it's difficult. You know, I mean, I know I'm working, so I'm getting paid for my time, and I know there's a lot of people on here who that is really not the case. And I think that, you know, given the seats that we're trying to fill, it becomes potentially even more of a burden, or at least the same level of burden of taking some hours out of your time. And I really hope that at some point the county can fit it into, you know, prioritize if this is eligible expenses and fit it into some grant application to help, you know, cover stipends for participation. Because I think that it's going to be hard to get, you know, just some of these seats filled potentially, because people are, you know, it's just difficult. They might have childcare issues. They might have, you know, can't take off of work, but we really want to get their input because they are impacted by groundwater management.
Yeah, and Sarah, and I appreciate you bringing that up because it falls into the whole realm of DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. We want to be equitable and ensure that folks have the opportunity to join our table. You know, right now we definitely can be more equitable in that aspect. And when I'm having these conversations with legislative in terms of additional funding for our small GSA, that is something that I'm advocating for, and definitely looking at in terms of other grant opportunities too, because yeah, you know, you and I are working right now and other folks are taking time out of their days. But that's not the case for a lot of these people, and especially the group that we're trying to bring to the table or bring the table to. So I appreciate you bringing that up. William.
Yeah, and kind of just going off of that, I think we've internally reached out to DWR a couple times to see like if there is any opportunities or if Sigma would fund something like that. And we've kind of heard that they're not willing to fund something like that right now, at least. So I think that at least if we could somehow fit it into how we fund our GSP implementation, if we can set aside or make sure that there is money set aside when we set up those fee studies, to have money set aside for those missing seats, then that would be better to fund it internally, and then we'd have that revenue stream continuously for that person rather than relying on grants. Especially if it kind of sounds like there's some issue with DWR funding people in that capacity.
Thank you, Will. Any other questions about the press release? I'll make that edit and I'll put that information in there, Sarah, that you recommended the eligibility criteria as to the extent of the charter, and then I will send that to the GSPAC by the end of this week, so you guys have plenty of time to review it, provide comments when we bring it up during our May GSPAC meeting. Okay, let me go ahead and pull up the slides again. Great. All right, I believe we are on item 6.4. I hope so. Big Valley well application GSPAC review process. Again, this is going to be another focus point of next GSPAC. This is still in the very, very early stages, but again, something that I just want to pitch to the GSPAC to give you all a heads up, so you can start thinking about this and we can start finalizing this process. But again, I've had a conversation with environmental health and CDD, and I'm going to invite them to next month's discussion so we can elaborate a little bit further about the preliminary chats that we've had. But basically, we were talking about, okay, these new well applications, when those come in, what is going to be the GSPAC's role? in our Big Valley Basin, what is going to be the the GSA's role in the Big Valley Basin. And I know that with the drought and just with SGMA in general, GSPAC and the GSA do need to provide input and comment and approve. The GSA does need to approve these new well applications in our Big Valley Basin. So it's going to take a lot of collaboration between environmental health, who takes in these well permit applications, and then CDD in terms of land use planning, and then our department when it comes to watershed managers, and then our role in the GSA. So again, this is just preliminary. This is draft. We'll have further discussion on it in the May meeting, but this is what our initial thought was. So when folks do apply for a new well, they will submit an application through environmental health. And what environmental health will do is they will submit that well application to my department, Lake County Watershed Protection District, and then same with CDD. The district will onboard a third-party consultant to review the application. With this application needs to be a hydrology report. So we'll have consulting firm review the hydrology report and provide additional comments on said application and hydrology report. Once I get that hydrology report sent to me, I will then send the well application with the hydrology reports and comments to the GSPAC for any review and comments. And then what I will do then is I will collect any comments from the GSPAC. And then when this well application ultimately goes before the Board of Supervisors acting as the GSA for review and or approval, I will be able to submit the hydrology report from the third-party consultant based off the hydrology report that was submitted with the well application, and any comments from the GSPAC members on that well application. And of course, GSPAC members, along with any member of the public, will then be able to provide any public comments during that item when it goes before the board. So again, just ensuring that the GSPAC has the opportunity to provide any comments and is well aware of any of these wells that are being proposed and planned in the Big Valley Basin. But that was, again, very preliminary discussions. Haven't made any firm, hard decisions on that, but I want to get your guys's mind focus on that and just bringing that up because we will be talking about it in more detail come the May meeting. Before I move on, I'm sure there's comments or questions on this preliminary process. Go ahead, Sarah.
So you want to wait for the in-depth discussion for what would you like right now? I mean, what's appropriate right now?
If there's any comments or questions or concerns that you have right off the bat, I'm more than happy to take those now, but just knowing that this is not a set in stone process right now.
I wouldn't mind talking with you offline, just because I think I have a list.
Okay.
But I am, I guess there's one piece I'm really curious about, and that is that knowing that there is, as I've had explained to me from environmental health, the knowledge of the wells in the county and probably statewide is like Swiss cheese. You know, there's a ton of information that's not known. There's wells that are not in any sort of log or not in any sort of well completion report, kind of bigger piece of information database. So I'm wondering it seems to me like this will work much better if, to be able to evaluate whether a well is going to impact other wells, which is the review that has to happen, need to know where the wells are. And so so I am wondering if that is going to be part of this process. Is there somebody over are you going to be working in conjunction with DWR to not only close that loop of information of that you get as much as you can into a database, but also the whole process of new wells that are being drilled, that gets reported properly as well to DWR, so it makes it onto their database.
Yeah, and that's a good.
Like those need to be a part of this type of process.
Absolutely, and that's a very valid point, Sarah. And it unfortunately it's not fortunately, however you want to look at it, it's not just a Lake County thing. It is an issue statewide, especially with a lot of these older wells. You know, and DWR acknowledges that there's a lot of missing information. And environmental health, our local, you know, well permitting agency, they're the first one to admit that there is a lot of lacking information and unknowns about the current wells and their conditions in our county. So yeah, that's something that definitely we don't want to repeat those patterns. And if we have this opportunity now moving forward to get that information, I'd rather do that now as these applications are coming in, and we definitely have the ability to, than, you know, 10 years down the line, us, you know, kicking ourselves in the back because we didn't take this opportunity. We didn't do that with this new opportunity that we have. So definitely something that we would be looking at and ensuring to be better moving forward. Because it's difficult, and you know, that is a goal of us, but you know, of ours, and it will take a lot of collaboration with environmental health, but it is very difficult to go back and try and get that information on those wells now that weren't reported properly or submitted well applications X amount of years ago.
But I think that GSPAC members should be at the first of the line, providing the information about the wells if they haven't done so already. You know, just at least in terms of location and especially if it's not on the state list, like it should be a mandatory part of participation to be transparent like that.
And making notes. All right, David, I believe you had your hand up. Nope. Okay. All right. Well, let this fester for a little bit. We have a little over a month. Again, if at any point you're thinking of things and you can't wait until next GSPAC, just send me an email and I can make note of it, and I can make sure that we bring it up during the GSPAC meeting. So, all right, moving forward. Oh, we're really just moving along. Public comments. Are there any public comments during this time from members of the public? Holding my breath. I have not received anything via text or email regarding public comments. No. All right, seeing none. So our future GSPAC meeting date is May 26th, 2023, 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. We're going to get back on schedule. And I will send the agenda well in advance. Another thing that we're going to be talking about during our next GSPAC meeting is new Brown Act requirements as it relates to meeting hybrid and what we as an advisory committee are supposed to do. So I will have some folks from county council give an update on that. I know other advisory groups organized by the county have been doing that overview. So I want to make sure our GSPAC is up to date. And who doesn't love a good Brown Act 101 overview? I don't know someone who doesn't. So we will make sure we talk about that during the next GSPAC meeting and the items that we previously discussed. On that note, if any GSPAC members or members of the public want to have an agenda item for our next GSPAC meeting, just go ahead and email me and I can make sure that that agenda item is on there. We have a new listserv, so William and Mitchell will be trying it out with some groundwater updates, and then you all will be getting that new listserv for our May 26th GSPAC meeting. So fingers crossed, but be patient with us as we try something new, but really looking forward to that. All right, that's it. That's all I have for you all today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all for your participation. You know how to get a hold of me, and you know where to find the information. So I appreciate all you and your time that you spent with us today, and we will see you on May 26th.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.